Hello and welcome to Spectator Mode, and today I am very excited to bring you an episode all about Smash Bros.
私はいつ休めるんでしょうね。
Hi.
早期購入特典としておまけで今作っているものがあります。
Wait a second. Sakurai. Blink twice if this is an early April Fool's joke. You rascal. I know. A second Smash Bros. Episode? Yikes. The differences between Melee and Smash Bros. For Wii U are massive, and this is hands down one of the most technically demanding fighting games out there. Despite how demanding it is from a technical standpoint, the biggest draw to watching this game is easy. The people. My name is Adam Savadan, and this is Spectator Mode. There's a lot of information that I covered in the Smash for Wii U episode that definitely transfers over, but it's mostly in the terminology used when you're watching. Without bogging things down further, the easiest way I can find to compare the two games is with two other games. If Smash for Wii U is Street Fighter, then Melee is Marvel vs. Capcom. It's fast, really fast. Most professional players execute up to 200 button presses per minute on average.
Okay, he did something. He did something. It's not about the fact that, give me my spatula. There we go. Give me my spatula back. There we go. This is what we... Give me the spatula back. Did I 130% confidence? That was 130. That is why confidence.
Competitive Melee has a very firm rule set used in almost every tournament. All tournaments are run double elimination. Players play a set of best of 2 out of 3 or 3 out of 5 being used for most top 8s and finals. Each match is played with a timed stock, meaning there is a time limit of 8 minutes and each player gets 4 stocks, or lives. In the case that time runs out and both characters have an equal amount of lives, the player with the lower damage percentage wins. If stocks and damage are tied, or if both players lose their last stock on the same frame, the match is replayed. Sudden death is never played. The first match of a set is played on one of 5 neutral stages: Battlefield, Final Destination, Dreamland 64, Fountain of Dreams, and Yoshi's Story. The stage that is initially picked is determined by something called stage striking, random selection, or a combination of both. Stage striking basically means that each player removes one of the neutral stages from the pool until only one stage remains. The loser of a match gets to pick the next stage, picking from the remaining neutral stages or the one counterpick stage, Pokemon Stadium. The loser cannot pick a stage that has been played in the set already, and this is amusingly called Dave's Stupid Rule. And that's basically it for how tournaments are run. Pretty simple. Melee is defined by its speed and movement, so I'm going to try to begin to explain exactly what that means from a technical standpoint. Luckily, damage percentage works exactly like it does in Smash for Wii U, except in Melee there is no rage mechanic. If you want a refresher on some of the basic terminology that is shared between Smash Bros. Games, I would highly suggest checking out my intro for Smash for Wii U by clicking here. Things like smash attacks, tilt attacks, and aerial attacks are referred to similarly between all games on commentary. Teching is one of the pillars of the game, and this is used to recover quickly when hitting the ground, or a wall, or the ceiling of a stage. This is performed by hitting the shield button the exact moment that they collide with an obstacle. They can also hold a direction when hitting the ground to roll left or right. Players have a 20 frame window to execute this action, meaning that it's about a third of a second window to get the input correctly. This is the easiest way to avoid pressure from your opponent, but not entirely safe. On the opposite end, there is something called tech chasing. This refers to your opponent's ability to punish your options on tech. Dash dancing is a movement option that is available to every character and is used for both offensive and defensive purposes. It is merely quick movement back and forth. Some characters have a better dash than others, and this can be used to avoid attacks by the opponent and punish accordingly, or to create pressure situations. Wave dashing is another movement option that players have, executed by jumping and quickly air dodging down to the ground. This allows players to put their character in situations that they normally couldn't reach by walking or running or even just dash dancing. It also lets you face the same direction while moving and use certain moves that you cannot use while dash dancing. You can also wave dash out of shield, which is a powerful defensive option. Wave landing is also a thing, but that just means they're doing it from a little higher up, and you can also do it onto platforms. Lag canceling, or L canceling, is another technique. This is used to cut the landing lag from aerial attacks by half. Every character in Melee has to wait for the frames of an aerial attack to finish before they can move, and L canceling circumvents this. There is about a 0.1 second window for players to execute this technique. This really opens up the doors for players to be able to defend themselves after an attack, and also helps provide us with the insane combos that Melee has to offer. Crouch canceling is used to decrease the amount of time that a player is in hit stun after being hit by an attack, allowing them to counterattack quickly. However, as a player's damage percentage increases, crouch canceling becomes less desirable as they are knocked back farther. Sometimes it's better to take a hit than try to crouch cancel it. Power shielding refers to blocking an attack at the perfect moment as to take no damage to your shield, and this also reflects projectiles back at your opponent. They have a 2-frame window to perform the projectile reflect and a 4-frame window to stop a melee attack. DI, or directional influence, means you can change the trajectory your character flies when knocked back by the direction you hold your control stick. Players use DI to escape combos and avoid situations where their stock can be taken by another player. The best part is though, since these situations happen constantly, it makes the combo game very much into a 2-player affair in Melee. If a player is trying to DI out of a combo, they're putting themselves closer to having their stock taken. If they're trying to DI back onto the stage, they're opening themselves up to more combos and more damage, and most likely having a stock being taken. It's a breathtaking experience to watch. It's worth mentioning that there is something called Smash DI. Despite its name, Smash DI is not a subtype of directional influence, but a different mechanic altogether that can be performed under the same circumstances. The major difference is that while DI changes the trajectory a character is launched in, Smash DI changes a character's position before launch. This is an extremely difficult thing to pull off, with most Smash DIs having multiple inputs that need to be done within 1/12 of a second of each other. Edge guarding works a lot differently in Melee than it does in the other games, as unlike in Smash for Wii U, there is no edge trumping. Players receive a few frames of invincibility when grabbing the edge, and only one character can occupy the edge at any given time. This is called edge hogging. There is also a term called sweet spotting when players are trying to recover onto the edge, which means they approach the edge in such a way that they have a larger set of frames for invulnerability when making their recovery. Alright, disclaimer. The game's a lot more complicated than I've explained in this intro. Thankfully, I've been joined by the people's champ, Bobby Scar, to talk about everything Smash Bros. Melee, from the players to the community to some super exciting matches. Hello and welcome to Spectator Mode. My name is Adam Savadan, and I'm very excited to be joined by the one and the only Bobby Scar. Bobby, how are you doing?
I'm doing great. How are you?
I'm excellent. I'm very excited to talk everything Smash Brothers Melee with you. Obviously, you are known throughout the scene as being kind of pioneer, I guess, of you're like an ambassador, a good ambassador of the game is what I would say. You started Melee It On Me.
Melee It On Me was like the first Melee talk show, you know?
Okay. Yeah.
So it created the Melee It On Me Facebook group, which was like one of the bigger post-Smash Boards forums. Yeah, and it's still like a website that's used today, like aggregate content, and we do some player rankings.
Yeah, that's crazy to me. I can't believe every time I see that, like, no offense, that Melee is still going, I'm always like amazed. Like,
no
the fact
offense
that this game has a game to have longevity, especially now, is a very hard thing to do. Like,
yeah.
Game devs are still trying to figure it out, you know, like, and every once in a while we get this like thunderbolt of a game that just like happens to stick around for years and years.
Platforms? Oh, and he's mixed it up there, so getting him a lot of mileage. Okay, what's he got here? Johnny
He's got to grab the ledge. He's got to grab the ledge.
Oh my God, he just did it! And he just
Mr. J is a legend! Mr. J, are you out of your mind? This is evil! Do you know
Well, we're happy to have you and all the other viewers that are keeping it alive. You know,
Yeah.
I feel like it's an honor to, you know, have our game have that kind of lasting power and that much interest over years. Yeah.
Yeah. And I'm hoping that
Years.
people will take a chance to, after listening to you and the introduction that I make and everything else, like being excited to watch Melee. Because I think there's a lot there. There's so much. It's so cool. I love watching it. Like even doing all the homework for the show, I was like, this game is incredible.
Yeah, it's nuts.
Absolutely nuts.
It's
So
one of a kind for sure.
Let's start, just briefly touch on the beginning of Melee. Like I don't need like a complete history lesson, but I mean, as a game that started as a party game, like Nintendo meant for it to be a 4-player game where you sit down with friends at a couch and you have a bunch of wacky items in it and there's a bunch of stupid stuff going on. And then somebody decides there's a scene that starts growing where we want a one-on-one, no frills, but Smash Brothers.
Both on the East Coast and the West Coast, different little scenes started to pop up. And if I recall, like most of them, you know, people found each other through like IRC. You know, it's like there was no web forum or anything like that. It was like a really kind of grassroots community. And yeah, different people. I feel like this is the way that grassroots scenes kind of pop up. Like someone who is passionate enough to take the lead and do something new just does it. And so there were several people who just, you know, decided they were going to throw Smash Brothers tournaments. And I think that's more or less how it started. And different people became more or less like regulars, and people started to learn from each other. And this was like a really ragtag, you know, disparate communities actually. Like we didn't form one community for a while.
At what point did you come in?
I created my account on Smashboards, which ended up being like the you know, the home for all Melee in 2006. So 2006 was like when I really took my first baby steps. I had one really good friend where we just like kept, you know, we had our own little, you know, best on your block metagame. We kept getting better than each other, and then we would surpass each other and stuff like that. And I actually remember, I think it was Wikipedia. I don't even know if Wikipedia existed in 2005, 2004, but I bet it did because I remember looking up Super Smash Bros. Melee and seeing, I was looking up Roy and Marth, who are two of the sword characters in the game. And it said something along the lines of Roy is slower and stronger than Marth, but actually at competitive levels, at higher levels, it flips. And Marth is slower and more powerful than Roy. And I was thinking to myself, like, what the heck could that possibly mean? You know, how could a character be slower and stronger, but then when you get better, like it flips around? That doesn't make any sense. So I remember being like, always knowing that there's this mystical other world out there, but never where to find it until my good friend, he went to college and he went to a game lounge. This is in Drexel University in Pennsylvania. And that was where he met, you know, competitive Melee players. And I remember it was one day he was like, dude, Bobby, you gotta come to this place. You're not going to believe these people. And I was like, dude, I'll beat them. You know, you may have lost, but whatever. I think that I'm better than you. No basis in fact. It's just, I never played anybody who was better than me, so I was taught that there was, like I said, this whole other world.
Yeah, it's crazy, right? Like you play this game, and even this is like really kind of for a lot of competitive games or games that people play like where the internet was still in its infancy. Like it's not like it was today, where it's like you can just find information everywhere, and you don't think that there's other people out there that play the game the way that you play it. And I think that's the one through line of everybody getting into Smash Brothers, especially near the beginning. Was they thought that they were the ones that played the game the best, the right way, and they didn't think anybody else had any idea what they were doing. And
it's because everything in the world told us we were true.
Yeah,
I couldn't find any evidence that said that I wasn't really good at this game.
Near her, maybe not short hop nair like Scar's doing, but you can do a full hop nair in the combos, and that helps extend it.
Ooh! All right,
down there. Yeah, there it is. Oh! Do it again.
Oh!
Stomp on his face. Yeah, you're the people's champ. The people's champ.
It would be impossible to talk about Melee's history and how much the game has progressed and all the people that are involved in it without mentioning there's 5 players that are considered the gods of Melee.
Mm-hmm. So the 5 gods of Melee are 5 players who basically for a long period of time, you know, if I had to guess, it was like 2007, 2008, all the way through to 2013, 14, like a really long period of time, they were the 5 players who were really defining the top level play. They were a full step above pretty much everybody else, and it stayed that way for a really long time. Yeah. So they're Hungrybox, Mango, Armada, Mewtwo King, and PPMD.
I really wanted to start with Armada.
Mm-hmm.
I wrote down some notes, and I don't know Armada. I've never met him. I've only watched him play games, and I've watched like a few clips of him I watched that Smash Brothers documentary.
Yeah.
And he is definitely calculated, I guess is the word I would use to describe him as like an outside viewer. What can you tell us about Armada?
So Armada is super interesting. I mean, I've spent a lot of time around Armada and not as much time with Armada. But what I know about him is like he is the kind of guy whose standards are just so high, and you know he seems to me to be a person who kind of won't take no for an answer in terms of you know, him pushing himself and his own ability.
He's staying Fox. No meditation here. Nice. Whoa, whoa. The difference.
I mean, the meditation might have turned up.
Whoa. Oh, my God.
You know, just a guy with super duper high standards and always pushing himself to live up to his own expectations.
Do you think that that's his strongest point, is just his ability? He just works harder?
Armada definitely works super hard. He works hard at the right things, I think. He's got a great ability to kind of cut through the nonsense, you know, and figure out what is and what isn't important. And one thing that I've noticed about Armada, like time and time again, is his determination. Like, especially if you have Armada up against the wall, there's always this moment where he'll wake up, sort of, and find this kind of rock solid balance and center. I think that's his kind of greatest strength, is this kind of just sheer force of will and determination. Yeah. One of the things that we've seen a billion times, like literally this is the defining Armada win, is like a first stock. So there's 4 stocks in the game. The first stock will be neck and neck, and Armada will just barely take the first stock. He's at 100%. And he starts destroying the other player, like, you know, takes 2 more stocks while he's still in his first stock, and they just cannot take that stock. Mango and I have actually talked, we'll talk about Mango in a second. We've talked a lot about like the whole spectrum of Melee, and there's like this 10% or this 20% of the whole game that's so much more important than the other 80%. And it's like, make sure you don't lose your stock. And when you're in a position to, like, make sure that you take the other person's stock. And I think Armada probably more than anyone, it has like really mastered both of those areas of the game and kind of like all the stuff that circles it.
Yeah, man, you gave me goosebumps when you're talking about Armada, like turning that switch on, because I think I've watched that in a few sets that he's done throughout when I was doing the homework for this show. And God, is there a better thing in any esport, like when a player just all of a sudden just turn, like they just turn on, you're like, uh-oh. Like
it's super scary. It really is super scary, because he just does not give an inch, and it's very weird to see a player like not give a single inch.
Armada? What is about something about Armada in Game 3, man? Like something about Armada in Game 3 where he just decides, you know what, man? Like, I need to make this a 2, at the very least.
Oh my gosh, Leffen, why? Why Leffen? Armada.
He like forces the other player to take every single advantage. Like, he will not give anything up for free, and just his ability to understand what that even means and to execute it is like, yeah, it's really astounding when it happens.
What's his nickname again? What's Armada called?
The Swedish Sniper.
Yeah, and then why is that?
So Peach pulls turnips up out of the ground. This is something from all the way back in Mario 2, and they brought it into Melee. And so he has shown us a lot of times that he can throw that turnip really nicely.
I'm so sorry, I can barely speak right now.
Yeah, I mean, it's so intense. I mean,
oh, nice.
Oh, wow,
okay, that was... Oh my God! I can't believe he got that! I can't believe he got that! Sniper strikes again!
I watched some video of him doing Peach she can randomly pull out a turnip that does more damage.
A lot more.
Like, I can't remember what it's called. Stitches?
It's called the Stitch Face, yeah.
The Stitch Face. And there was a video that was like a Stitch Face combo that he did on Mango.
Armada just trying to bring, he's just like, oh, Stitch.
Is that?
Yeah, that's right.
Oh, yeah, you're right. Oh, man. Oh, it looked like Genesis 1 all over again.
There's not very much RNG, random number generator, like randomness in Melee, but that is one thing that does happen. And you kind of have to just factor it into the character. Like, it's you can't consider Peach without her random ability to pull these superpower turnips. But when it happens, it's pretty brutal. It just changes the match.
Forward smash him! Disgrace him!
Do you think that's a good thing as far as the game goes?
Yeah, that's a good question. Would it be better or worse without it? Well, so Luigi, for example, has randomness with his forward B. It's his recovery, and I think that's kind of important. It's so important to the character. The randomness is 1 out of 8 times, apparently. Just odds that high means that it's actually like every time that it happens, you're kind of aware that it's possible. So it's not a surprise as much. And it kind of, I can't imagine Luigi without that mechanic.
Like a Falco is shortening his... Yeah.
Oh!
Yeah! I don't mean to cheat. Oh, okay.
My God.
Everybody, let's go, Abate.
Thank you, RNGesus.
But for Peach, it's kind of the chances that you get these super turnips are very, very, very low. So it's like you could go many, many matches without seeing one, and so it is more of a surprise. I think that that's definitely a part of the game. You know, like he's used the randomness to change his play style to, you know, add little, you know, moments where am I going to let Armada pull all these turnips sort of thing. Like those kinds of things start to enter people's minds.
Yeah.
Armada's going to throw turnips all day. This matchup.
Another Stitch phase.
All of the little things in Melee, like nothing feels random to the point where it hurts the gameplay. And I think one of the most interesting things at the top levels are not actually the game mechanics, but how people react to these weird things. Like some players are just rock solid and they can deal with randomness without it really affecting their mentality. Other people, like it's much more emotional and it can really, you know, make or break their mindset. And those things I think are the real tests, you know, that high level and top level Melee makes it very human and more exciting in my opinion.
It's funny that you mentioned like a very emotional player because I feel like Mango, the next god that we'll talk about, is a very emotional player.
I think the most unique thing about Mango is we only know and we only believe whatever he says about himself. So, Mango, would you like to tell us who you are? Because none of us know.
Let's go.
I'm the sickest Melee player to ever touch a controller, without a doubt.
And
I might not be the most optimal, the smartest, but when I get going, it's a sight. It's poetry. It's beautiful.
He was fascinating to me because even in the Smash, I'm going to keep referring to the Smash Brothers documentary, which I think everybody.
It's so good. Yeah, definitely watch it.
It was so good. I was up until like 2:30 a.m. one night just watching it because I just got hooked on it.
You know, I think that the documentary, the documentary is incredible. I think that Samox himself, the creator, would agree that perhaps Mango didn't get like the best rap. It was kind of a little bit more one note for a person who I think is very nuanced and complicated.
I'm probably just gonna kind of do what you do and just play a bunch of games, but I'm kind of limited to how much.
You can't do it like me.
That's in the aspect of playing. Oh my!
You can't do it like me.
In the aspect of playing multiple. Shut the hell up!
You wish you could. Do
I hate
it like
you.
Me.
I forget what I was gonna say now. What were we talking about?
How good I am at Melee.
You know, one of my favorite things to think about is like Mango has said a bunch of times, like he kind of grew up, he kind of came from nothing sort of guy. And he said to me on a couple of occasions, like if it weren't for Melee, I would probably be in a gang. He is a person who kind of is unapologetically himself. And he's got like a natural charm and charisma in that he's just always earnest and authentic. And I think that that's like why he has a pretty passionate fan base. You know, people really connect with Mango on just a very personal level.
Don't let this happen to you. Just leave. Trust me. Just walk it off. Come back for the award ceremony. Don't just stay there. Always leave the stage. Grab your shit. Leave right away. Say GG's. Hug it out if you have to. Knuckle. And then immediately go complain to your coach and say, you know, we suck.
I find that you saying like him being so genuine is interesting because that's what I felt for all of these people. Like, they're all so genuine. Like, Armada is this quiet kind of hardworking Swede, and then there's Mango, who's this like very charismatic, energetic American. What can you tell us about like Mango as a player?
I think that he is such an important character in Melee's history because he's always been the foil to Armada's and M2K's and PPMD's calculatedness.
Playing against Mango, it's more like if the train is coming at you and you're not ready, then you're dead. You gotta dodge the train. And if you can dodge the train long enough so it slows down, that's when you can go in.
I think that those three players, more than many, many, many others, are the ones who are trying to distill the principles of Melee into something that's repeatable and kind of create this order from the chaos that is the game, and just use their superior understanding of the mechanics and their own ability to control their character, control themselves, control the situation, to kind of like beat people in a very like a very head-on manner. Yeah. Mango has never quite done it that way. He's very much the guy who's going to subvert people's expectations and use the knowledge of what is good against his opponent. He's much more of a judo kind of guy, or like, you know, he's letting the opponent's momentum put themselves in kind of a bad situation. I remember Lovage one time described him as like the drunken master, the drunken fighter, who you don't really know what they're doing, right? They're kind of moving all around, but like you kind of can't hit them, and they hit you when you're not expecting it. Like they're just not following the rules, and that's what makes them so hard to beat.
He's good at getting a reaction out of you. He's good at saying, well, if I do this, I know that you like to, you know, have this type of response. I know kind of what makes people afraid, what makes them angry, what, you know, everything like that. And so he's playing much more of a psychological game. He wants to get the crowd involved. He wants people to be talking about it. He wants there to almost be like an effect beyond the game where people come home, and even if he loses, he said, yo, did you see that sick thing Mango did?
And would you say like he obviously plays more on emotion?
I think so. I mean, it definitely comes through in his play, and he can be really on fire, or he can feel kind of slow. He's not as consistent in that way.
I think it's also important to talk about how Mango is infamous for his runs through the losers bracket.
Yeah.
In a lot of tournaments.
Yeah.
It seems like we talked earlier, where there's that switch that turns on for some players, and
yes,
for some reason Mango gets put in losers bracket, and then it's like something happens. Actually,
so funny how these things work out. Mango for sure has incredible just base level skill. If you're not a top player, like he's just going to beat you just on pure muscle memory and mechanics. Yeah. When you play the way that Mango plays and you want to outthink your opponent and outsmart your opponent, there's always an inherent kind of variance to that. And in a weird way, the people who are more perfect players can be abused and exploited more with his particular playstyle. And so I kind of think that like it's just the limits of his playstyle. Like it makes him good in a certain way, but also less consistent in the way that the other god tier players have been. He's still very, very consistent.
When you said that, you know, players that like the technical players have trouble against him, do you think it's because they are so stuck on the fact that they think this game needs to be played a certain way, and Mango's like, no, I'm here to show you that I can express my play style however I want in this. I
think that's the story of, it's really well put. I think that's the story of Mango, right? Yeah. A bunch of people saying this is the way the game's going to be played, and like getting great results doing it, and Mango saying, no, that's not the only way, and I'm going to show you. He really does feel like the protagonist of the scene sometimes, and I think it's because he's just got that classic narrative of like the underdog, you know, and he's coming from losers, and he's just fighting with tools that seem less superior, you know? He's just not as buttoned up, not as polished, doesn't seem as prepared ever, but when it works, it's just so awesome to watch.
Oh. I'm not gonna lie, this might be the craziest. Oh, no! Oh, wow! Yo, the heavens just want Mango to win. They really, everybody's just like, hey, Mango, bro, we love you so much. We're going to give you games.
And we've seen him fall enough times to know that he's not invincible, you know, the way that Armada has appeared to be invincible many times. And Muji King, before Armada came around, was really invincible.
So that's interesting to bring up now that I think about it, in that when Mango first came onto the scene, was he just playing the game in a completely different way from everybody else?
So Mango, when he was coming up, actually played Jigglypuff. And we will talk about Hungrybox for sure. My kind of thesis on a lot of this is that Jigglypuff is a very hard character to understand what the heck she's doing. Mango playing Jigglypuff and getting really good with her, I think, is like a way to kind of not get detected as someone who is playing in a totally different way, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So he was learning Jigglypuff, but no one understands like what Jigglypuff is quote unquote supposed to do. And so he's doing stuff flying under the radar where nobody probably is really realizing that, you know, he's kind of subverting a lot of expectations. And then at a certain point he switched to Fox and started using Falco. And that's, I think, when it became a little bit more clear what was going on.
Do you think it was one of those things where he was playing Jigglypuff and just trying to fit in?
even just a little bit, like playing a certain way, like, hey, this is the way the game is meant to be played, and here's this character who everyone thinks is like very safe, very slow, very methodical, and he's kind of like playing this character, and this is how it's supposed to be played, and he's like, oh, okay, this is how Smash is supposed to be played. And then as you grow up, obviously you forming your own opinions, you get older, and then all of a sudden it's like he's like, oh, well, I actually want to play Fox this whole time, and now that I know who I am, maybe I can play Fox now.
I've never asked him why he played Jigglypuff. I think that he would probably say something like, well, I thought she was cool. But I think it's a fascinating question.
I just think that's interesting, right? Like I'll keep hammering home the like these players are able, aspects of their person come out when they're playing.
Yes.
And you can see,
for sure.
For someone like you who you've watched thousands of matches of Melee. I would put an entire paycheck down to say that Bobby Scar could look at 2 different Foxes play and know who is playing each one. Like, oh, that's Armada. That's Mango. Like, you'd be able to tell the difference.
I think so.
So God number 3, let's actually, and probably someone who I thought wouldn't charm me as much as he is Mewtwo.
I know who you're going to say before you say it.
Like, I would watch him, I always kind of like, even from an outsider, I would root for him when I watched him play, and I didn't know why.
That is it! Mewtwo King wins! That's it! He won! Look at him! He actually can't believe it! He can't believe it! He said I won! Mewtwo King! Oh my god! This is the best pop-up I've ever seen. The best pop-up! That's the best pop-up! He doesn't even believe it! It's better than the no pop-up. Yeah! This is what you're supposed to pop-up? Mewtwo King! Mewtwo King! Mewtwo King! Oh my god, he doesn't believe it! This is amazing!
He's so different from everybody else. Yeah. And it's just like, and even watching the documentary made me actually a big fan of him, of watching his episode on the documentary, which I'll find a link for it. I'm going to put it in the show notes because I think it's important to watch, because you can't help but like the guy.
There's 4 missed Smash DI inputs. Hbox lasering, describing his view of the matchup. Mewtwo King confirming it. Oh god.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah,
I agree.
So can you sum up Mewtwo King?
Can I sum him up? I'm not sure, but I'll do my best. I spent the most time with Mewtwo King out of anybody. You know, we when I was getting good, you know, we were I wouldn't say attached to the hip, but we were very, very close for, you know, a number of months or years. I don't quite remember how long. And I guess if I could say one thing about Mewtwo King, it would be like how genuine he is as a person, despite like how different and weird he is, you know? Yeah. So my sense is that he's just super, super forthcoming and straight up about everything that he thinks. And what he thinks, it's almost like the stuff that I feel like it's very human, you know? It's not that he has weird thoughts, it's just the extent to which he takes them are strange, because most of us know how to rein some of those ideas in. But he seems to not be able to do it in such a sweet kind of way.
I put my silver melee controller. Dude, Rainer doing something. Do you think you can make a quick announcement before? I need you to go somewhere else. No, my controller's gone. I need to find it. And I'm filming this, and I can't put it on YouTube.
He's got this kind of little brother, like really this kind of sweet core to him, and he's just so serious. So he's got this seriousness and this earnestness, and then this like really human kind of like sweetness to him, and it's just it just comes together for him.
Yeah, I know. Look at that. I don't know what to do. I mean, obviously, yeah, go to a doctor. Yeah, everyone said that.
Yes, go to a doctor.
Yes, I know. Everyone said that like a million times. Yes, I know. I'm gonna go.
No, you're not.
Yeah, I am gonna go.
No, you're not.
Yes, I am.
You're not going.
I am.
And he's also hyper consistent in like who he is. And I think that kind of, when people see him for maybe the first time, they'll be like, "Ooh, like I don't get him." But like his patterns are so obvious and so clear, and he's so reliable and predictable in that way that I feel like it makes people feel a little bit safe, you know? When somebody's doing weird stuff, you don't know like who they are down in their core. It's like, I feel like it's offsettling to people. Offsettling, right?
Yeah, it's just weird. He is who he is, and he acts a certain way because he doesn't sugarcoat himself for anybody.
No, and it can borderline on naive, right? But it's like at the end of the day, it's very very open and trusting, and I think people like that a lot. You know.
What can you tell me about Mewtwo King the player?
Hey, like the same stuff that I say about his personality, and a lot of these guys, you know, you can see their personality come through in their play, which is super cool. He, I think, more than anyone, was a pure consistency like monster. So he, like Armada, has always been really incredible at the most important parts of Melee. In other words, if I hit you, I want to take your stock, and I don't want to lose my stock. What Mewtwo King did that Armada, I don't think, did in quite the same way is kind of turn situations into like a machine or a factory or a production line. He created these like elaborate traps, and people would get sucked into some sort of black hole, and then they would enter his kind of like punish zone, and he would just melt people. This is for years and years, to the point where this is actually when I was first coming up, when Mewtwo King was like honestly invincible. You know, I remember other top players in the scene, like they were the top before Mewtwo King kind of came up, kind of feeling like they were done with Melee. Because it was like Mewtwo King figured it out and the robots have won. I mean, that was really what, on the East Coast, was seriously how people felt. He was so good at what he did that he convinced everyone else that the world became a machine, you know, to feed into his punish game so that he was going to take all their money and all their stocks. I mean, honestly, he was so intimidating because no one had ever done it the way that he had done it.
Yeah, that's incredible.
Yeah.
Oh my god.
And you can still see it with the Mewtwo King Marth on FD. Like, it's still this kind of FD's final destination. It's like this big flat stage that makes it really draws out, like, there's so few things that get in the way. It's really just a head-on kind of match. And so if you have that kind of machine, it's just going to shine that much more. It's going to come through that much more. He has a quote in the documentary where he said, if I can do something like 99 times out of 100 times, that's not good enough. Like, it has to be perfect.
God number 4, Hungrybox.
What can I say about Hungrybox? Hungrybox is of the 5, the one who I've probably spent the least time with. It's kind of tough because Hungrybox, I think, more than any of the other gods, like, he's a little bit known for this kind of, he's got a mysteriousness to him. He's not as forthcoming, if I can put it that way, with either like what makes his play important or impressive, you know, or kind of who he is and what his motivations are. And I don't quite know what Hungrybox's statement is through his play, if that makes sense. And I think that's given him this vibe, or this kind of, he has this imposing kind of nature to him as a player. You know, there's like this, there's the moon in Majora's Mask, which is going to crash down and kill everybody. And I think that Hungrybox, he kind of has become this sort of like really scary, intimidating obstacle, if that makes sense, where it's like he's coming at the rest of the community, and he's like this big force to be reckoned with. And he plays Jigglypuff. He's one of the few, prominent Jigglypuffs since Mango stopped playing the character, for sure, and definitely the defining player for the character by far. And so, you know, not only does this apply to him, but right, the other part of the thesis of like people don't understand Jigglypuff as a character, or how to relate to her, or how to understand what she's doing. It does kind of tie into this like real dense fog of, you know, the Hungrybox world.
I don't want to dive too deep on it, but what is it about Jigglypuff that gets people all up in arms?
Well, Jigglypuff for sure. Okay, good question. Jigglypuff does not follow a lot of the rules of Melee. When she gets hit, because Jigglypuff is like a very floaty character, and she can recover really well no matter where she is. But because she's so floaty, she can she dies more easily because she's very light. She flies farther. I guess what that ends up meaning is she flies farther from like pretty much lots of hits, so it's hard to combo Jigglypuff, and people love to watch combos. So that's one element of the game that kind of is not as highlighted or prominent. Like, there's fewer opportunities for that fun thing to happen. Yeah. And she tends to slow down the pace of the game. And in addition, she has the rest move, which, depending on who you're cheering for, you know, if you're cheering against Jigglypuff, rest is this thing that I think uniquely in Melee preys on, well, it's that and the wobble. It preys on like a lot of our human weird little biases where we kind of like can't make the math work in our own minds. I freaking hate Jigglypuff. I think she's the worst character. Why can she press down B and kill you? Doesn't make any sense. Yeah, that's not fair. Every hit Jigs gets, everybody holds their breath. All she's got to do is press down B, mix it up with her broken ass grabs. And another thing Jigglypuff has is that psychological edge. You get rested at low percent. What are you thinking? I fucking hate Puff. Where it's just like knowing that there's this way to lose. Being so aware that there is this way to lose, Jigglypuff creates this environment of hostility for the opponent at all times. And if you, especially if you're cheering against her and never considering her perspective, it's sometimes hard to know when she's vulnerable. You know, even though she's this teeny tiny ball, she's got this kind of, I don't know if you've played Streets of Rage 2, but like in the very intro, they have like, do you know what I'm talking about?
No, but
so in Streets of Rage 2, you've got like 4 characters, and the 4 characters are like standing behind the city they're trying to save. And then at the very end, like the bad guy, like a monster image of him kind of pops up behind the whole city, and he's got like the whole city in his hands. But he doesn't really exist, but he's everywhere.
Yeah, that's Jigglypuff.
Jigglypuff can create that feeling. Okay. Especially in the hands of somebody like Hungrybox.
It feels like the rest thing too is so anti-momentum. You know, especially if you're watching. When you said that when you're cheering against Jigglypuff, and I'm watching, let's say, a Fox player play Jigglypuff, and they're trying to execute this game plan where they are trying to be nimble and they're trying to be quick and they're trying to do these combos, and then all of a sudden, a rest happens. Everything stops. The whole game stops. The game actually stops. The player dies.
And she's asleep.
And she sits there, and then the other player floats in on their platform, and that's it. Like, it's just such a, I can see why people, I've grown to kind of understand why she's a fun character to watch as I did homework for this show. But I think it's for somebody, when you're first watching it, you're like, wow, this sucks. I've
also said that I think, I don't know if this is a Bobby Scar original, I'm not sure, but having played a bit of Street Fighter, I really think that the archetype of the grappler transposed onto the melee kind of sumo wrestling environment is like Jigglypuff is very much feels like she has a grappler style where it's hard for her to get in. Once she does get in, she could just destroy you, you know? Like you're in the mix-up. And so your job is not to do what you do against every other character, right? You're not supposed to go in against a grappler. You're supposed to keep the grappler out.
Yeah.
And I think that Melee just does not have a bunch of characters that act like that. And so for players, it's frustrating because you have to play her game. There's no negotiation. And for fans, you know, not being able to understand why your favorite player is losing and like seeing them lose in these ways that just feel so, you know, every time that they get red and it just works out, it looks so easy. That's like, I think one of the big parts of it. When Jigglypuff's winning, it looks so easy.
And I think that we'll loop back a little bit to Hungrybox. He makes it look easy.
He definitely does. Yeah. He definitely does.
He makes it look unfair.
He makes it look unfair. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
That was sick.
This looks like just like a Hungrybox training against a level 9 computer.
Puff can just up air forward smash those.
Oh man. That was a 45-second match.
I think that players like Hungrybox are important to the ecosystem of fighting games. You know, you need players like that to keep everybody in check.
Yeah. This is one of the things that I hope can change a little bit, because the more that I watch Hungrybox from his own perspective, you know, as I watch his play style, he is a really incredibly skilled player. Yeah. It's pretty bonkers. Like, I think that the things that he does, when you think of like a strong grappler in Street Fighter, they have to make big plays all the time, and they have to make guesses over and over and over, and they have to kind of lead opponents into a trap. You know, you have to set an elaborate trap and they have to fall into it. And he does it over and over and over. And it's like, when I really think about how he wins, it's like, how did you know this, that, or the other? You know, how did you pull this off? It's really incredible. And I think that, you know, I think that it's kind of a shame that it's not more relatable. That's like one of my missions is to make at least his play more relatable. And I hope that on the other end of things, you know, I would love to know what he's thinking, like on a really human level.
You just sparked something in my brain about grapplers and about how for those of you who don't know, in a lot of other fighting games, grapplers are like the darlings usually of spectate. Like, people love watching grapplers. They love watching grapplers. They love watching them get in. They love watching grapplers execute this game plan where they are just so oppressive to their opponent, and they make them guess, and they make all of these plays that are high damage.
Yeah.
And fun to watch, and then it's funny that you transplant that onto Jigglypuff, and all of a sudden everybody's like, nope, don't want it. Nope. Yeah. It's like, I'm all done with this. Yeah.
I really think that it's just it doesn't look the same, you know? Like a grappler matches how we think about a fighter, and they're always big, you know, and they're always like
Zangief. It's Zangief.
Really big monstrous people, right? And Zangief will headbutt you if you jump, and like it's like, oh my god, the stun, or like he's just gonna grab you with his big hands and throw you, and it's like it all kind of just makes sense in our minds. But Jigglypuff, I think, is doing the same things, but just by making it look so different, it's like we don't understand what's happening, and that turns people off. You know, they need to know. I don't want. It's like the end of the movie is just like the hero died. I don't know. He tripped and he fell and he died. I don't know. I don't know what more to tell you. And it's like, how do I deal with this in my mind? Like all I can do is look forward to the next tournament. You know, like the next episode. Like maybe he'll come back.
Yeah, like Fox tripped and he fell into arrest, and then the credits roll, and that's it, man.
It's like, all right, well, that's the end of my story. Yeah, I like this theory or this mental model of what's happening a lot, because that's sometimes how it feels when, say, Mango loses to Hungrybox. It's just like everybody's like, well, all right. Yeah. You know, hope he gets him next time, but I'm done. I'm not.
But fuck Jigglypuff. Like, they're just so, like, you know what I mean? Like, they're so quick to, and I feel like now that you put it more into, I never thought of her as a grappler before, but now I'm starting to like what I've watched. I think it's so interesting. Yeah. And I'm like, oh my God, it makes so much sense. Like now I want to go watch some Melee, Bobby. Like,
the big key whenever I watch real grapplers is that I'm always looking at them and how hard it is for them to get in. And so I switched that kind of idea of like, I need to start looking at Jigglypuff and think about like, what is Hungrybox doing to get in and what is the opponent doing to keep her out? Okay. And then watching it that way, it's actually so much more fun.
The last god on our list, who I admittedly, it was real hard to find some information on him. I know you can give me the what and the why, but maybe the who as well. PPMD, also called Dr. PP.
Dr. PP, I think that he had to change his tag when he got a sponsor.
Yeah, he got a sponsor and he had to change his tag.
No evil geniuses, Dr. PP is not going to
happen. There's no Echo Fox Dr. PP. Like, it doesn't
That's
work
right.
like that.
Was not going to happen. Dr. PP, the person, that one's kind of hard.
PPMD as the person and the player. Would you say there's a parallel, or do they actually?
I think it's about the same. I think Kevin, what he puts out is pretty much what you see. Like, he's a goofball. And then he'll get real serious too. So he's like, I think that shows, like, I think Kevin's pretty much what you see is what you get with him.
I know. So when I first met him, actually, it was when I was more or less in my prime. I drove down to his home state, North Carolina, and I beat his ass in tournament. And after I beat him, I remember he came up to me and he's like, hey, Scar, man, like, I really think I could have beaten you, but I don't have any Falcons around here. Like, would you want to play some? You know, I really want to figure this matchup out. And I was actually just like, yeah, sure, it sounds fun. Just kind of thinking in my head, like, yeah, whatever. Like, a bunch of people have said that. But I think, like, his seriousness, you know, and his intensity kind of, like, and kind of that, like, no nonsense, like, I'm just going to tell you what I think, and, like, can you help me even though I'm, you know, bringing it to you on my own terms and in my own way. I think that's definitely, like, a PPMD kind of thing. So I know that PPMD has changed as a person a lot. You know, he's kind of been out of the scene for quite a while. It's got a whole host of reasons why, not very many to my knowledge related to the game itself. Yeah. And so he's kind of been on a long journey of, I think, self-discovery and all that fun stuff. He, as a person, I think, was very much dissecting the game and like understanding its constituent parts and kind of like thinking about it at an elemental level. It feels somehow more scientific than robotic, if that distinction makes sense. But PPMD, I think, has always struck me as more of a scientific kind of player, where he's definitely not the like super practiced and rehearsed, but he is trying to control. I think that's a really good word for PPMD. He's trying to control as many variables as humanly possible all the time. You can totally see that in his set with Armada at, I think it was Apex 2014. That's the one that he did not win. I remember I was watching it. This set it was 2 3 out of 5s and a bunch of games were Marth versus Peach on Dreamland. It's a very big stage. And Marth has a very hard time taking Peach's stock. It's like a very long, arduous kind of process. And oh my God, PPMD would make it as long as possible. You know, he would make that process of KOing Peach as long as he needed to control every single thing. Like he did not want to, he wanted to minimize all of the bets he was taking. You know what I mean? For me, I could not understand it. I was just like, dude, just hit forward on the yellow stick. Like make Marth do this big swing of the sword, like forward smash him. He's going to die.
Yeah.
He just would not do it. He would run through this like very well thought out, very methodical flow chart until the stock was taken, because that was the most controlled way to do it. A lot of people super duper loved PPMD. I'm not really sure what it was that you know, I think probably his intensity, but I'm really to this day kind of not sure why he had the passionate followers that he did. I think in every sense we're an underdog community, and we love the underdog. We love underdog stories. And so PPMD versus M2K, PPMD versus Armada. Like I think PPMD versus Hungrybox in a sense. Like it was always a story of, you know, will he win because he's kind of the more. He's just got a different vibe to him, you know, and like when you get tired of seeing one person win, you want to see somebody else win, and PPMD was always able to do that. But I know there was more to it. There's the chant, the PPMD chant was "Stack It Up."
Yeah, you know, I just yelled at him to grab. Like that wasn't commentating. That was me yell. Yo! A very dangerous position. Pew Pew follows him all the way up.
Yeah. Stack It Up chant come out.
And I never even knew what stack it up meant. Like, were they? I think at the end of the day, they were talking about dollars.
Yeah.
You're gonna stack up the winning, like the dollars. Is that what you guys are talking about? Like, I just never understood this chant. But people, seriously, I passionately stack it up, stack it up.
But then realized it was a double hit move, not just a fair.
That's right. All right, PP needs to. The stack it up chant is louder than I may have heard it in years.
Maybe even slice it up.
People still talk about PPMD. It's like, you know, the second coming of Christ in a melee version where people just talk about PPMD is going to come back and beat everybody.
Yeah.
So he's definitely been deified and mythologized, and I think that's awesome.
That's cool to me though, that he seen as being on the same level as everybody else, like all these other four gods. Like is PPMD from a pure skill level? Is he seen as an equal? Yeah.
Yeah, when he was active and in his prime, for sure. Yeah, he was. For me, it's like these 5 players are the 5 gods of Melee, and that's a title that they can never be taken away just because of their accomplishment in the, you know, the consistency of it, the amount of time that they did it, and like how good they were and how they changed the whole landscape of the game.
There is one more player I want to talk about who's not necessarily considered one of the core 5 gods, but who I found to be
compelling.
That is the word that I would like. So Leffen.
Oh! That's it! Leffen jumps out of his chair! Hungrybox and losers bracket.
Leffen is he's the heel of, you know, with wrestling terms. He was just a heel through and through, and it's just
I do a wrestling podcast, so
it's so awesome to like have that.
Laughing it off, like, haha, I'm still gonna win. You know, he's got that fucking. He's such a villain. Look at him.
Oh, okay.
You gotta taunt every stop. I hope you lose, Leffen.
Dude, the Hungrybox pop was gonna be so and Leffen wins
with a little smirk on his face. Yawns like.
You cannot tell him, you know, that he's not the best sort of thing. Like he's just always going to get you. He's always going to kind of get you where you're mad. He's just going to, and there's just something about the heels that kind of gets you invested. Like you want to see him lose. You love to hate him, but they bring this thing that like, they bring this ingredient and this spice and this humanity to the sport and to the, you know, to the community. That's like, you know, it wards off complacency from the top players. It's like this kind of looming threat. It's this unanswered question. And I really think that he did all of those things, you know, for Melee. If you can show the clip or link to it, when he won EVO 2018 and he took that moment, you know, it's this moment that you see in video games and movies, like when he just kind of stood up and he took the moment in, you know, he just stood there.
Yeah.
It was such an incredible moment for Leffen's multi-year, you know, like 6, 7, 8 year story in this community. Kind of everything coming full circle, coming to fruition for the guy. It was so awesome.
Because like Leffen went from when he was first in the Smash community, he was like he was young. He was 16.
He was young.
And he was young, and he did some things that weren't necessarily agreeable, and he actually got banned from competing in Sweden?
He got banned. I think it was more or less a global ban.
It was a global ban? Okay. It's always fun for me to watch people that are like Leffen, where they start off as this, like most of us are when we're young, right? And then to come, I think full circle is what I wanted to highlight was his win at EVO 2018 and just how much Leffen has matured as a human being. Even announcing that he was donating part of his winnings to the other members of the top 8.
Yeah, it's super cool. I think the kind of person that he is, like one of the reasons that he's a good heel is that he's very, very principled and very kind of self-assured. If Leffen is the kind of guy who's going to say, hey, my belief is that people who are in the top 8 are getting way too little money and like the split makes no sense and I'm going to do something about it myself, that is something that he will for sure do. It's like just a core part of who he is as a person. And so, I think when he realized that there were consequences for certain things, it's the same way as we get, and that's the other thing that I think is so incredible about Melee and competitive gaming in general, or even sports. At a certain point, you realize that we can just invest in ourselves and like things get better. You kind of are shown the limit of your ability with no work. And I think that there are very few kind of places in the world where just straight time and like coasting can get you pretty far. But not in an environment where everyone is vying for a very, very scarce resource, which is like wins. And so, Leffen has consistently learned how to get better at the game, but he also, learned more and more about the community and about, himself within it and all those sorts of things. So I think it's really cool that in the same way that these things happen in the game, you make a mistake, you get punished, and then you learn. And so, that sort of thing happened, I think with when he crossed the line a couple times, he realized and said as much that, he realized what he was doing and how it was not cool and, that he was going to change. And sometimes, there's a certain cynicism when we hear that from other people in the world and like nothing ever happens, but he really did.
EVO 2013. Most people know about the story. A lot of people don't. In 2013,
a lot of people don't, more than I thought.
Yeah, the EVO Championship Series, which is like a big fighting game tournament that happens every year. Would you say this is the most important Smash tournament?
It is. It's the tournament that expands our stage. It's a Smash tournament, but it's also a fighting game tournament. And the fighting game community is kind of the umbrella community that I think Smash Brothers has always wanted to be considered a part of. And so, yeah, in a very important way, it's kind of like us on a bigger stage than we have on our own. And so for that reason, if nothing else, it's the most important. It has the most eyeballs, so it has that prestige associated with it.
And for a community that was fighting for so long to be part of the FGC, the fighting game community, like you guys fought tooth and nail to get in. And for the longest time, even for years after this event happened, I think people still continue to fight the fact that people do not think that any Smash Brothers is a quote unquote real fighting game.
A real fighting game.
Real fighting game, which is horse shit.
What are we going to do?
So in EVO 2013, they were like, we have an open slot and these are the ideas that we have for games, or these are the games we have announced, sorry. And then there's this open slot. So, and then they gave us a pool of like, it was like 6 communities or 6 different games, I think, or something like that. And they were like, whichever one of you can raise the most money for, was it breast cancer?
Breast
gets
cancer.
in. Breast cancer research gets in. There was a stream that you guys did when you were fundraising. And I think it was right near the end. It was like crunch time, I guess. The deadline was coming
crunch
up.
time.
And you were neck and neck with a game called Skullgirls.
Skullgirls.
So the whole community bands together and you say, we want to get an EVO. What's the feeling like?
I actually wrote something about this that I haven't shared. One of the best moments of my life took place on my Twitch stream on the night of January 31st, 2013. You're right. It was the night of. It was the final night. Yeah. Cue the Majora's Mask. I was at the center of the EVO donation drive, so it was this competitive fundraiser as you described. And yeah, I described EVO as like the Super Bowl of the fighting game community. My stream is the home of the community's fundraising effort, And as you mentioned, we were trading the lead back and forth with Skullgirls throughout the night. And as the stream went on, more and more Smashers, more and more community influencers like called into the Skype call. So it was pretty much just like the chat on one half and this Skype call on the other half, and that was the whole stream. It felt like we were summoned together by like a common goal or a common dream. And I felt like our donations, like we donated not expecting to win necessarily or expecting reward or recognition, but like, you know, we wanted to bring Melee to Evo, and it kind of didn't matter if we won or not. We just we knew what we had to do. I don't want to spoil anything but in Undertale, but there's this moment where one of the characters says that like she can feel like the hearts of every single, you know, monster in the underground beating as one. Like she can feel this kind of consciousness of like everybody. And that's what that night really felt like. There was actually debate as to whether our resources should go to this or whether they should go somewhere else. Because it was super possible that we would have won, and then like being the 8th game at Evo meant we get like a corner set up and like it does nothing. So we had no idea, like there were no details included. We just hoped and believed that, you know, this was a way to like get us a new level of exposure. Because I think in a very real way, that was kind of a life or death moment for us. A community that's as old and as storied as ours, you know, where we kind of knew it was our job to keep the flame alive. I think that's what happened and why the money came out the way that it did and the support came out the way that it did.
Would you say like Melee raised you guys? Is that how it feels?
Yeah, I think in a very important way. Melee for sure taught me a lot of things that, you know, to this day, I don't think I would have learned elsewhere. Regardless of whether you reach the top of a craft relative to other people, just the journey of trying ends up being a journey of the thing that you're studying, but then it kind of asks you to look inside and figure out who you are. What do you bring to the table that no one else can? And, you know, what are the things that are holding you back? And those are big, scary questions that are hard to answer, but the games and the communities and the people and the, you know, whatever it was that brought you in and that you feel like inspired by, those are the things that help you answer those questions.
You win this, man, we keep getting sidetracked. You win this fundraiser, this donation drive.
94,000.
94,000.
94 or 96.
Man. And so Melee has made it into Evo.
Woo! That was in January of 2013.
And then Nintendo.
Mm-hmm. In I think June or July.
It was like really close to Evo.
It was
like,
really close.
Evo usually used to happen in the beginning of July. But just before Evo was about to happen, Nintendo says, nah.
Mm-hmm.
And that, oh my God, I can't imagine what you were feeling. To go from that to Nintendo saying no.
Yeah.
I mean, they reversed the decision in a few hours afterwards because the backlash, understandably,
the backlash was nuts.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was a very scary moment. It was terrible. You know, because of all the things that we just talked about, it's just sometimes it's very obvious that, to me anyway, that things are just so not personal. And it's just the machine grinding along. And, you know, I think that we kind of, even moments like after it was reversed, we assumed that like just somebody somewhere saw something. It was just like, oh, well, you know, our policy here is to do X, Y, Z. And they just kind of did it without knowing the story behind it.
Yeah.
And, you know, that totally sucks. And it's kind of like we've had this, I think that we kind of know or feel or think that Nintendo doesn't really care, but we don't need them in a sense. You know, it's like not about that. It's like we're super happy that they made Melee, obviously. But
I
we've
mean,
kind
like,
of been the stepchild, right?
It's never been about Nintendo.
Yeah.
The scene's never been about Nintendo.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. Yes. So like having them be absentee for like pretty much our entire journey as a community, and then
all
to
of a
come
sudden
in,
show up. Yeah. And like that's got to sting a little bit, right? Like,
yeah, it's
like,
not
really?
a good first impression.
Like, really? That's what you just want to say? Like, come on, man.
Yeah.
Like, really? Now?
Not only did we come out, but all of Reddit and the internet came out for us, and it was just clear to Nintendo that from a PR standpoint, it's not going to fly. Like, we can't do that. And I think that was a big, big, big deal for us in kind of understanding that we mattered. it was both a horrifying moment when the rug was swept out from under us, but as we regained our footing and realized what was what, at the end of the day, it kind of made the story that much more powerful. So
yeah, I agree.
Can't feel too bad about it.
Hands down, one of my favorite storylines in esports is that Smash getting into their first Evo and even continuing on to this day. Yeah,
and that tournament was amazing. Evo 2013 was such a storybook kind of tournament for Melee, where all the best storylines were on display. And the very first set in top 8 was, I'll never forget it, Armada versus Shroomed. Armada's playing Peach, and Shroomed is playing Black Dr. Mario. He wears a black lab coat.
Yeah.
And it was on Battlefield, which is a very dark stage. And Evo had a projector where, we kind of in the crowd were watching the game. And I swear, I will never forget, the volume was turned up so loud on the projector, which didn't have like great darkness, whatever, the levels. All you could see was like Dr. Mario's big nose. Like you could not see any of his body. And he was just flying around. You just heard him like yelling every time. Wah, wah, wah! And it was, oh my God, it was blaring in my ears. And I saw people get up and like leave. And I was like, oh my God. After all of this, we have this horrible like nose flying around throwing pills at this. It's just like a slow matchup. It's too loud. I was just like, oh my God, it's going to be terrible.
Yeah.
But then, a couple sets later, I remember pulling up the Twitch app and seeing Smash Bros. Melee as the biggest game on Twitch for the first time ever, like 113,000 viewers. Yeah. I was like, oh my God, we did something like real and something big.
What I thought was probably, it looked on paper from everything that happened, was probably one of the most important Melee tournaments of all time. Apex 2015. The crowd was nuts.
Yeah.
The whole atmosphere just seemed very charged.
He'll sit in his shield because, again, if he gets grabbed, up throw up air is not going to happen. Nice shield drop up air. Oh,
we're not done yet.
Yeah, we're not. Oh my! But the movement, the ledge dash.
Apex was the biggest tournament series in Melee, grassroots tournament series. Period. Largely, I think this is in retrospect anyway, because it billed itself as such. Where it's just the self-fulfilling prophecy of that. I remember like before when they were not the biggest tournament in any way, all of their marketing was the biggest Smash Brothers tournament, period. And I was just like, you can just say that? Are you allowed to just say that? Like, can I do something? Like, it's just false. But it turns out you can't do anything about it. And in fact, if you say it enough times, people start to believe it, which blew my mind. Like, that's a lesson of marketing right there.
If you say something enough. Yeah.
Apex 2015 delivered on that promise. It was huge. There were so many people, so many competitors. It was just a massive tournament. On the first night, I remember I was doing Melee It On Me. It's a podcast that we do. That was the Nintendo representative came on to give us some exclusives about Smash 4. I made the Melee HD joke. If you've never heard that, I'll send you a clip.
Smash 4
and
4.
Are they gonna? He dropped a bomb on us. Melee HD is coming.
Oh my God!
So after the podcast was over, I went to bed, and I found out a few hours later that actually in the venue the ceiling collapsed. The hotel we were staying at had like failed a bunch of like regulatory codes or whatever, and in the like snowstorm that was happening, the ceiling like fell in. And so tragedy avoided, because would have been very bad if we were in there. And we all of a sudden had thousands of Smashers in New Jersey with no venue. Not widely publicized fact, but since I'm on the inside, Twitch kind of, busted out the wallet, busted out the checkbook, and bought us a venue for that weekend. And so just that experience of like everybody flying out, everybody getting into the venue, the ceiling literally falling down on night one, or night zero, and all of us relocating, whether it's from bus, car, carpooling with each other, people ferrying people back and forth. We eventually all migrated from one hotel to another. And so I think that like that experience and then setting up this whole new venue and this, that, and the other, it's just like when you go through stuff together, there's this kind of bonding or this kind of, overcoming another obstacle, for this kind of like common goal or this common want or need. I think that kind of gave that charged vibe to the whole event. And it ended up happening. I mean, the schedule took a hit for sure, but at the end of the day, we played some Melee. We made it happen. We had a really big tournament with a lot of awesome matches, including the last big Salty Suite.
Yeah, which was Leffen versus a fellow named Chillin' Dude.
Chillin' Dude, an old legend.
Isn't this the Chillin' Dude rap?
Yeah.
Is this where this came from?
This is the Chillin' Dude rap. This is the introduction of what do you call it? Like diss tracks.
Make this pussy stop talking. You're not one of the gods, you're one of the god awful. We all got kin when looking at your fox. Bitch, stick to smash 4 and losing by 4 stocks. Not a fan of your style, you ain't standing your ground. You get wins while kicking a man when he's down. Like, I beat Mango, I'm the favorite if he chokes. As far as Armada goes, I'll just wait till he's a host. Ain't no telling how foolish you'll be looking. Evidence.zip can't contain the ass whooping. Right when we realize the money match is over, that'll be a cue to throw your controller.
Ooh, it's a beauty. The first time I saw it, I was like, wow, that is something else.
That is something else. Yeah, and at the end of the day, you know, Leffen, never to pull punches, probably at some point said, like, hey, you suck. Like, I will destroy you. If you want to go, like, let's make it happen. And chilling with, you know, as a guy who has been through the ringer, you know, who really was a champion and, you know, still like a pretty strong player, he was like, well, no, you won't.
I think this guy talks a lot, and it's about time for him to learn some respect.
Leffen, what do you have to say to Chillin' before we start?
I'm sorry. All right, let's just play. I can bother this fraud, and let's move on, all right?
Oh boy, it's not pretty. It is
No, it
not
wasn't
pretty.
pretty.
And
It wasn't
even as
pretty.
someone who doesn't know Melee from like a deep technical standpoint, you can tell this is not remotely close.
No.
Also, in tournament, Mango money matches Leffen.
Yeah.
This man, okay, I went to his country, and he beat me. Okay. But you come to my country, and you beat my man 5-0. If we play in bracket, we're gonna put 1,000 on it. 1,000.
Leffen won. Mango lost $1,000. I remember right after he tweeted, well, that was like the quickest $1,000 I've ever lost.
If he does this, man, up till, not gonna.
Oh,
yes, it is. What? Of all the ways for the set to end?
I realize life is this crazy, mystical thing, and sometimes you just go out like a buster, and there's nothing you can do about it. I act like Mr. Cool Guy on Saturday. I call out Leffen. Oh. And then I just get 3-1. No.
Like, that was like the worst bet I've ever made, sort of thing.
Yeah.
And that's like, it just goes back to who Mango is, where he's just like, he's just always rolling with it. You know, he's throwing in these new ingredients and he's kind of playing off of them. I remember really having a good laugh about that.
Another great story that came out of this tournament too was PPMD came back.
Yeah.
And he won Melee singles.
He did. Yeah, I think he busted out the Marth. I don't think that I had seen his Marth much before then. He made things happen. He had a phenomenal tournament. I'm looking at his bracket right now. He looks like he won from winner's side.
Oh, really?
Mm-hmm.
That's cool. That's such a, like, I mean, for an underdog community, you got to love the underdog coming out of nowhere, right? Like,
yeah.
The one that, and people, and even the Ringo Starr of the like, or the George Harrison of the Five Gods, right? The one that's always forgotten kind of thing.
Yeah.
Like, it's like for him to come back and after an absence, especially for an absence of, I think, we talked about it earlier, but PPMD has had mental health, like he's been mental health issues and stuff like that, right? And for him to come back and overcome all this stuff and then win the arguably the biggest tournament with all the best players, like everyone was there.
Yeah. Yeah,
and
totally.
Like if that doesn't solidify your spot, your quote unquote spot.
Yeah.
For whatever that means.
Yeah, he beat Leffen and Armada 2 times in that tournament. And so, you know, while all of our other kind of, you know, it was an American tournament, all of our other USA heroes kind of fell one by one. And the top 3 were Armada, Leffen, and PP. And Armada, PP made it happen. Especially, and it was also in a world where like Fox, like, you know, kind of the end all be all. And PPMD playing Marth against Fox was like something I think of a breath of fresh air. because everybody versus Hungrybox was playing Fox. Leffen had chased Armada off of Peach, so Armada wasn't even playing Peach versus some of the top Foxes anymore. So it was kind of this kind of nightmare world where it was just Fox, 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 and everybody was kind of, it's one of those things where it kind of looks like, or the community will create a narrative of this kind of like harbinger of doom. The doomsday scenario is coming.
Fox. Yeah.
Doomsday scenario is coming. Like nothing's going to change, and then PPMD comes in. He's got the prince of whatever land Marth's from.
I have no idea. I couldn't even tell you.
He's a prince of something.
Let's move on to Evo 2016. Hungrybox finally wins the big one.
Just a tournament winner. The
Playing
pressure's
around,
on.
Playing around each other right now. Armada not giving him anything.
But he gets hit.
He gets
that could be it.
And he gets the reset to reset the bracket.
The reset
meets the double jump, waits out the air dodge, and Armada, he's got to play one more set. Hungrybox sitting back down.
I only wanted to bring this up just because of Hungrybox's reaction at the end of it all, because it's just like I feel like that's Hungrybox. Like we saw the real Hungrybox, right? You alluded to earlier, whereas like you don't think we really see the real Hungrybox at any given time, kind of thing? Like,
I'm just never sure.
Yeah.
I'm just never sure. But I know that was like and he won it in such Hungrybox fashion where he just kept being down and he just like refused to lose and would like pull the rabbit out of his hat time and time again. It was just like, oh my God, what is this guy doing?
Whose ear is this?
Eats a back air. This is big. He recovers.
Tournament winner. Hungrybox presses forward on the gray stick, and that's the end of Evo 2016. Hungrybox put a miraculous win in set 1 of Grand Finals and able to beat Armada on such strong counterpick stages of Fox.
That was like Hungrybox is the best in the world. The question that was going to be answered by who won Evo 2016 was pretty much, does Hungrybox have like a legitimate strong case for best in the world, or does he not? And
why was it Hungrybox specifically?
I think, from what I recall, it was just the momentum. He had some big wins.
He had been winning a bunch leading
up
up to this, right? Like he had been on a major, because this is the point. Hungrybox had been winning a bunch leading up to this tournament, and it was also he wasn't even working full time. Like he was melee full time. And also that was a story going into 2018's Evo too, because he had taken a job and he was kind of not doing melee full time either. But I mean, that's another story. But this was like, this, I guess, was the storyline leading into this was this Hungrybox's time? Like what did this pay off? Like taking time off working full time, concentrating on this game for 12 hours a day or however much he played it.
And that's something that I think he's been kind of going back on. I still feel like I'm not sure if he's just a full-time player or if he has a job as well. But and I feel like I've never quite known.
Yeah,
so he kind of goes back and forth.
The last one, we haven't actually talked about him, but there is a player named
Plup,
who is always kind of on the outskirts of this God discussion.
Yep.
And
he came out of somewhat nowhere.
Really?
Yeah, he was a Samus player for a really, really, really long time.
Because Leffen has all the momentum. Momentum is so real in this game. But one smash attack from Club, one straight hit that gets Leffen off the stage. Oh, he misses him!
Go!
Back air!
Doesn't quit!
Down smash! Oh my God! That's it!
That is game!
I mean, he was a very, very, very strong Samus player, but Samus is not the kind of character that's kind of blowing up the tier list, or that's kind of winning. And it's a certain point he switched to Sheik, and
all of a sudden, it's just like, yep.
Sometimes. He could no longer be ignored.
Yeah,
could no longer go undiscussed.
And I think that this is the big moment that I could find was Plup had spent his melee career kind of tackling these gods one by one. And I think that is that considered like kind of the I don't want to say unspoken rule, but if you beat all the gods, like that's a checklist, right? Like everybody wants to do it.
Yeah. Very, very, very few people have like even started the list, and far fewer have even gotten close to beating all of them. Yeah.
That's crazy to me. That's so crazy that they are that far ahead of everybody else.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's why I feel that, that the title can never be taken away. It really was a period of such insane dominance that lasted for so long and was like so consistent, so unquestioned that that was just it.
So Plup finally knocks. He had not beaten Armada for he hadn't beaten Armada in a tournament match. This specifies they have to they're beating the gods in a tournament.
From Plup.
Okay, good stuff to Plup, and he grabs the ledge, and he knew that he would go for the ledge. So smart.
Yeah. Great stuff from Plup right there. Plup on the verge of defeating his demon, but he goes down. All right, Armada's got one chance to stay in winners right now.
Yeah, he still has a chance, but let's see. Plup is looking to seal the deal. Oh, got a little bit too close. Great smash DI from Plup.
Yeah, gets out of the
And
grill.
that should be it
And
right
there
there.
it is.
Plup takes it over Armada for the first time, and Armada approves of it.
So the one thing that I like asking people, the first thing that I like asking people is if you were going to come up to me, or if I was going to come up to you and I was going to say, Bobby, I've never watched Melee in my life. I need to know what's like the one set. You don't even, I hate to put you on the spot, but what's a set?
No. The first one that I would say is M2K versus Shiz Game 4. M2K Shiz 4 is, and I'm just going to link it to you. One of, you just have to watch it.
What's about?
Like
let's get technical. You can get
whole
technical.
crowd, whole crowd is just so into this set, and like they're just freaking out so much the whole time.
Clearly, Mewtwo King wants this fight against May. But Shiz fighting back.
That is just, it's just a set and a day and a moment that I'll never forget. This was at ROM, Revival of Melee, and this is all the way back in 2009, right? So just one day, Mango said that he would fly out to the East Coast to settle the score with Mewtwo King. Because I, for one, and I think most of the East Coast just did not believe that Mewtwo King was not the best player in the world. We still didn't believe it. I don't know what to tell you. I mean, old beliefs like that, they die hard.
Yeah.
And so Mango flew out, and we kind of like had this last-minute scramble for this day that Mango was going to come out to turn this from a local tournament into a regional or national. We ended up calling it, we rebranded it. It was just going to be a bi-weekly, but we called the tournament the Revival of Melee.
Yeah.
Because everybody was saying they wanted to come to get a piece of Mango, including the Shizwiz who's in this match, who's from Florida. And so, very long story, a little bit shorter.
Yeah.
This is the losers finals of Revival of Melee. Mango's actually sitting on the winner's side. And in fact, I was heavily involved in running this tournament and, bringing everybody into the building and setting up the setups. And I will say that there was a tiny bit of bracket planning, shall we say, to ensure that Mango, play the best that the East Coast had to offer in sequence. And so
collusion,
Mango,
they would say.
it was somewhat collusion, right? But it was kind of like it was more wrestling in my mind anywhere.
Yeah.
It's more for the story, and there really at this point there still was like no money in the game. There's no money in the game.
Yeah, it's all pride.
So what you're really playing for is for bragging rights, and people. In 2009 we were not as global, even as national of a community, and so you don't know if these people are ever going to play again. I mean, that's just the truth of the matter.
Yeah.
We're calling it the Revival of Melee because we think the game's dying. So anyway, now I'm just justifying collusion, but I still kind of justify it. I kind of justify it.
I understand it. Yeah.
And so Mango beats everybody's ass. Mewtwo King's in the losers bracket. Shizwiz is in the losers bracket. Like a bunch of heroes of the East Coast have already fallen. They're out of the tournament. And we're seeing like a really insane neck and neck, back and forth battle between Mewtwo King, again, the guy who's like indestructible, he's like a Darth Vader kind of, is how we felt about him back in the day. And the Shizwiz, who really was kind of like this heroic Falco figure, where he would kind of come and go. He wasn't really like always there, but whenever he would show up, he was just like so undeniably skilled. That he would just, I don't know, he was like an explosive player and like a really exciting person to watch. And so these two guys are like just going at it. And Shiz has shown us some stuff that, no one has ever shown us before versus Mewtwo King. and an incredible game, and you could just hear everybody like totally losing it. And this is like the real grassroots stuff.
Yeah.
In fact, like now when you see top 8, like it's a production, you know, they pull out all the chairs, all the other setups go away, they get a big projector. No, this was not that. It was one CRT. Everybody could still play friendlies, which is what you were expected to do. But like no one was playing friendlies. Like there were these 2 guys behind the CRT setup, and I was in the back, you know, looking at the computer because we were recording it, and a bunch of people behind looking at the recording. Like literally as many smashers, as many gamers as possible who could see this TV were looking at this TV. And like, I think that those moments are so important and like special because it's like, just when it's not the expectation, it's not the norm, but you can feel the gravity, right, of the story pulling people's attention and everyone wants a piece of it. Ooh, it was just so sick.
Do you miss that part of it?
You know, okay, so I got to tell you, it's still kind of there.
Oh my goodness! And this, what's he gonna do? Oh, he sends him the wrong way.
Whoa, the up, he was so smart. Shine out his shield. Oh! Leffen DIs horribly.
Oh, and this is
oh my God! That comeback. Okay, the crowd is going nuts, and that is because everyone in the room knew that Leffen had the momentum, he had the positioning, he had the percent, he had everything in that set, and Mango stole it back.
Genesis 4, I would definitely check out like Leffen versus Mango. Leffen Mango, they had such incredible sets, so this is just one more entry in that. Really awesome set. But I do remember like after Mango beat, I think maybe it was Hungrybox or something like that, I was in the crowd. Like people were getting up out of the stands, people were hugging, people were like practically crying. Like it was just, you know, it was a very similar feeling where it was just so intense. It just felt like everything that Melee should be. Yeah. And there are still moments like that. Do I miss the old days? No.
Yeah. Everything kind of moves on, right?
Yeah.
And we all get older.
Yeah.
And things change, but
and you know, I've been more of a progressive figure, I think, in the scene. Like I realized a long time ago that, you know, what I felt was my, and to be honest, I still serve my community. Like I kind of feel like Melee has given me so much. It's taught me so much about who I am. It's taught me so much about like, you know, how to think about things. It's introduced me to so many people who like will for sure be lifelong friends where I can never ever imagine like a world where I hadn't met them or all those things is kind of given me. And so as a person who, you know, I'm from the East Coast and I'm not too much like my family and not too much like the people that I kind of grew up with or grew up around. And so I kind of was a black sheep kind of guy where I didn't really fit in, and kind of like, I guess to me, the finding where I fit in, right? Finding where I matter and where I can do something that's important to other people was so important to me. And I just kind of believe that I'm not unique in that. You know, we're all looking for our people and, you know, our story. And so, you know, I realized a long time ago that what I wanted to do was bring this to more people, either directly through Melee or otherwise. And so, you know, I've always been serving the community, and part of that is like making it more accessible and telling our stories and like making sure that we're not this kind of like teeny tiny scene where I know I've dropped a lot of movie references, but much like the Isla de Muerta in Pirates of the Caribbean, the island that can only be found if you already know where it is. You know, I didn't want us to be that because that's the path to like us dying. You know, we need to create maps. We need to do that stuff. So for me, absolutely, like I've made my peace with the changes that are needed, and I hope that we never lose our soul.
Yeah,
that's really the thing. And I love that we're an in-person community principally, like we're not an online community, and we have these strong bonds, these social bonds. And I love that kind of our top players still have that kind of humility, and that we all know where we came from. And really, it's one of those things where probably the new games won't have they might not have, right, the culture and the structure and the deep kind of like respect for one another that we have. I think mostly because we all played when there was no incentive to do so. We all kept this community alive when there was no other reason than the love of the game. Nothing else. There's no money, right? There's no meaningful fame to be had. There's just cool combos, you know, bragging rights, and a super duper fun video game and a journey of learning.
give me your final pitch on watching Melee. Like, why should I be watching this game? What is it about it? And we've covered the stories and the people. I think that a part of it is apparent, but just the game.
Yeah. Well, you know, I'm a very big, like, not an individualist kind of person, but like, I believe that people should, at the end of the day, what I will always say is like, I hope that you like it, but if you don't, I respect it. That's kind of my vibe. So like my pitch to check it out would be like, if you've ever played Smash Brothers, if you've ever, you know, kind of like, if you know the characters, if you kind of get the thing, this is a video game that has stood the test of time. It's like just been around for so long, and it doesn't change. It like, we don't sweep the rug out from under you. You don't need to learn new characters. You don't need to learn new this, new that. What you see today is probably what you're going to see tomorrow. So it's kind of this fixed reference, and we've got like such a super deep history. There's like so many layers to the game and how it's kind of evolved and stuff. And at the end of the day, it's fun to watch at a very basic level. It's like there's a lot of new stuff. It's very fluid. It's like very improvisational. Like you will not see the same thing over and over. I definitely think that this is a game where it's kind of got that timelessness, but it also stays fresh. And like that's a really hard balance. And
I think that's one of its biggest strengths.
It's got a very, 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 very deep rabbit hole. I'll tell you that too. It's got a very deep rabbit hole where you can appreciate it on many, many levels. You can keep going deeper if you want.
All right. So Bobby, let's, can you give me all the places where people can find you?
For me, you can find me on Twitter at BobbyScar, BobbyScar. And you can find, I'm just going to say, go to patreon.com/thereads. Because I don't really have a really good link for YouTube. And you can check out The Reads, which is basically like, we're trying to make it a super chill web show on YouTube where you basically, I am sitting with my co-caster Toph, and we play Melee online.
Prove like 3 points. Spencer, if you can zoom in, just zoom in so hard in his face.
Oh!
Do you feel convinced? Or did you say that's average play, like above average?
Part of the course.
And we usually invite a guest, a top player, to hang out with us, and it's some good, clean fun.
That's cool. That's a great idea.
Yeah, that's inspired from
Mike Ross and
by Excellent Adventures.
Excellent
Adventures, and then Melee and On Me actually came from State of the Game, which was Me JP's podcast about StarCraft 2.
Really? Yeah. Excellent Adventures is what got me into Street Fighter.
There you go. Yeah, Excellent Adventures is great, and so I felt like we totally needed an accessible, more fun kind of like show.
Yeah, cool. And
so that's pretty much what I do.
And you can
The
find
Reads.
it on YouTube. The Reads. Okay.
Yeah.
So, and you don't do Twitch? You don't Twitch stream or anything like that?
I don't really, but you can follow me at Twitch_Scar on Twitch. I will stream rarely.
Okay.
And if you're into Melee, I definitely checking out Mango's stream, Leffen stream. You know, we can. Should we just include a couple or something?
I'll probably put links everywhere for.
Yeah.
I mean, I'll link all the shows, and I'll be like, here's some.
Definitely the documentary. Yeah. And definitely some of the top Melee streams.
Yeah, for sure. All right, that's it.
Awesome.
That's another show in the can. Bobby, you were absolutely awesome. I'm super excited to get this thing edited and out the door and everything
Sweet.
else.
Well, best of luck, man. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. And I hope if anybody gives Melee a shot that, you have a great time, because this is a game that a lot of people really care about, and a lot of people have kind of blood, sweat, and tears it up with. So welcome.
That is very apparent. Yeah. All right,
welcome,
everybody.
one and all.
Yeah, we'll talk to you later.
All right, there it is. Episode 3 is in the books. I cannot thank Bobby enough for his time. He was super generous with it. One more time, you can find Bobby at BobbyScar on Twitter, and you can find me on Twitter at WakeUpSuper, and you can also find me on Twitch at twitch.tv/cbats. That's all she wrote. I'm excited to hear what everybody thought of the interview and everything else in the comments, so let me know. And also, maybe any suggestions that you have for future episodes would be great. My name is Adam Savadan. That was Spectator Mode.